My guest is the United States Ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker. Ambassador, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to be with you.
Thanks for doing this. In February of 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and part of their justification, right or wrong, part of their justification was Ukraine aspired to be in NATO. And they used that as part of their rationale for invading. Now, nearly 4 years later, as we're talking about a ceasefire, we see the United States and our European allies in NATO talking about putting in a security force to make sure that a ceasefire stays. But every time I hear anyone from Western Europe or the United States talk about it, they talk in terms of Article 5. They reference that as a point so people will understand it. But is that going to be a put-off to Russia? Will Russia be interested in a ceasefire that essentially borrows something from NATO?
Yeah, well, a couple thoughts on that, Tim. I really think first we need peace before sort of this security guarantees or Article 5 like peacekeeping force would be put in place. I mean, we need to continue to create the situation to bring both sides to the table so that they can agree to a deal. And that's number one. I mean, obviously, President Trump is adamant that the killing and the death and the destruction and the devastation needs to end. We woke up this morning to a missile attack on an apartment building that killed 17 at least people. They're still trying to dig out, see if there's any survivors. I mean, it's terrible. It's not just death and destruction on the front line. It's in the cities in Ukraine. And I think a lot of what Russia talks about when they talk about the reasons for their invasion of Ukraine is all pretext. I mean, they just didn't want a Ukraine that was Western looking and didn't want it to be part of NATO, didn't want it to be part of the EU, didn't want it to be part of Europe. And that's, they decided that they would make a move on that. But, I'm obviously working very hard on this. President Trump and Secretary Rubio working very hard on not only helping Ukraine defend itself, but at the same time, bringing this war to an end, because it's been going on too long. There are no battlefield gains. It's not going to be won on the battlefield. It's going to be won at the negotiating table. And so President Trump continues to create circumstances to bring both sides closer.
President Trump has talked very clearly with the American allies about European members of NATO carrying their own weight, no matter what the process, how it unfolds, but making sure they carry their own weight. What does that look like?
Well, we were in the Oval Office a little over a month ago where he announced an initiative where the United States would sell to our NATO allies American weapons and munitions, and that those would be then provided to Ukraine by those NATO allies. And we've announced 4 packages of about $500 million each, so about $2 billion in total have been announced. I'm in the White House. He put me in charge of coordinating it here at NATO, and so I've been working very hard on that initiative. And we've seen Canadian allies, we've seen Germany, we've seen the Netherlands, and our friends in the Nordic countries, Sweden and Finland and Denmark, have really stepped up and they have spent the money. And I think we're going to continue to see through that initiative the prioritized Ukraine requirements list program that we're going to continue to see our NATO allies step up, buy American weapons, because they're the best in the world, Tim. And they're effective on the battlefield, not only the air defense, the Patriot missile systems, but so many other things that are being used on the front line and to defend Ukraine's major cities. But I want to put just a fine point on one thing, since I know we have a little bit of time to talk about this, when Joe Biden was in office, the American people were writing the checks for this war, for Ukraine to fight this war. And there was no rare earth minerals deal with Ukraine. The taxpayer was just on the hook. And now, since President Trump's been there, not only are we talking to Putin, unlike President Biden, but we're also, more importantly, our European allies, together with Canada here in NATO, are paying the for this war by buying American armaments, and they're also, buying other armaments that they make and manufacture. And we also are seeing, American jobs being created, and so it's a good deal for Americans. It's a good deal for Europeans getting the best in the world equipment to provide to Ukraine, and it's a good deal for Ukraine, obviously, because they can stay in the fight.
During his first term in office, there were several leaders from Europe that openly showed disdain for President Trump. I've never seen anything like it in my life. But this just a couple of weeks ago, when we had leadership of several countries at the White House with President Trump talking about this very issue, I saw great congeniality. I saw people that were acting like a team. And I'm wondering, what's changed since 5 or 6 years ago?
Well, first of all, President Trump is the leader that everyone looks to follow. And, I was at the NATO summit in June, and President Trump even mentioned that summit in Tuesday's cabinet meeting. He said that, he really felt a connection and a warmth to our NATO allies that he didn't in the first term. But ultimately, the American way, President Trump's way, is peace through strength. And these European allies, together with Canada here at NATO, understand that the United States of America brings certain capabilities nobody else can brings certain power. Our economy is big or bigger than the next 4 economies combined, and that includes countries like China and Germany, Japan. I mean, it's really extraordinary kind of what a powerhouse our system, our way of life really is economically, and the innovation and the entrepreneurship that we have, and we kind of take for granted sometimes, Tim. But that really makes us a strong, powerful country. And then I just have to always point out that if you think about the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, how did it end? It was American capabilities, flying B-2 bombers from south of my home state of Iowa down in Kansas City, halfway across the world, undetected, supported by our bases here in Europe and elsewhere. And we dropped, bunker buster, massive ordnance, precision strike, and left Iran before they could ever even do anything about it. So those kind of capabilities is what, most countries, in fact, there's very few countries that don't want to be our friend and ally. And President Trump knows that. And at the same time, it's the strength that he projects. It's his leadership that ultimately that's bringing these other allies, closer.
And we talk in terms of Russia and Ukraine, but when you sit down with your colleagues or with the leadership of these other countries, what are their other priorities? Setting aside Russia and Ukraine for the moment, what's most important to our friends in NATO?
Well, first, Tim, Ukraine. The war in Ukraine is certainly here in the European continent is important. I mean, they're concerned about it, especially those that are close to Russia on the Eastern Front, countries like Poland, the Baltics. I was just up in Lithuania this week, talking to them and going to their border and talking to the military and seeing the preparations to make sure that NATO and an ally like Lithuania are very strong, and they're already spending 5% of their GDP on hard defense. But the other things on their mind are the things that are on my mind and the things that are on President Trump's mind, and that is our defense industrial base, both in the United States and in Europe. It is the hybrid threats that they especially see here, whether that's computer intrusions, whether that is the jamming of GPS and radio frequencies. There's just a lot of kind of below Article 5 triggering efforts by some of our adversaries, but here in Europe, it's typically Russia that they have to deal with and they have to be concerned about. And I think the biggest thing, I'll just tell you because we're among friends here, but they're obviously very interested as to how the United States is going to deploy in the future. Are we going to continue to maintain a significant force here in Europe? What's that look like? As we, obviously have to focus on the 100-year threat strategically that China poses to the United States. What's that look like for Europe. And, I mean, that's what was so successful and so good about the Hague summit that we had a couple months ago, is that was the commitment to increase defense spending dramatically from 2% to 5%. That's going to create capabilities here in Europe by our allies, so that the United States, it doesn't have to bear the burden of this. The American taxpayer, Tim, doesn't have to bear the burden of European traditional defense. And so we are on a really good path of having Europe take up dramatically more of the traditional defense of the European continent. But at the same time, the United States is always going to have some presence here. We need this presence. These are our great allies, and a strong NATO alliance makes the United States stronger and allows us to project power globally because we have strong allies. And that's that's what's happening here. It's happening on a daily basis, and that's what primarily our allies are on their mind right now.
The media sometimes portrays President Trump as impulsive or even reckless when it comes to diplomacy. You've known him and worked with him for a long time. Tell me what it looks like when you see him concerned about, you mentioned Iran, or concerned about Russia and Ukraine, or any other part of the world. What are you seeing?
Well, first of all, I would say President Trump is engaged in what some have called energetic diplomacy. I mean, this president has been very aggressive, very energetic in engaging, whether it's with Vladimir Putin, whether it is with China, whether it is with the European Union on trade. He is unafraid to have conversations, but he also understands the leverage that the United States of America has. Because I mentioned the strength of our economy being 4 times the size, of any country that's next in line, but also because of our strength of our military. And he's unafraid to use those strengths to make sure that the United States of America is in the primary position. That's what the America First policy. But America First doesn't mean America alone. It's why I'm here at NATO every day working on our relationships with our allies, making sure that they're strong as well. And, President Trump, I think, is incredibly strategic when it comes to whether it's settling the war in Ukraine or whether it's these other peace deals. I mean, he's done at least, by some count, 6 or 7 peace deals, including Armenia and Azerbaijan, Iran and Israel, India, Pakistan, and the list goes on. And hopefully we can add Ukraine, Russia to that list if we can create the circumstances. But he's very strategic. He understands how to play the game of global diplomacy and kind of the 3-dimensional chess game that is global diplomacy. And I don't think anybody has been better at it than Donald Trump.
Final question for you, and that is, news sometimes gets filtered according to what a network likes or what a print publication likes. They pick and choose what they want. So completely unfiltered, wide open for you, is what's the single most important thing people should know about the United States and our relationship with our friends in NATO and around the globe?
Well, again, nobody has a better friend or ally than the United States of America. And right now, you're seeing that the options are either the Western free trade, fair trade system of a global alliance that's strong and powerful and can project force, or sort of a different way that is more dictatorial, that is not free, that is oppressive, quite frankly, and so many of our European allies and Indo-Pacific allies want to be with the United States of America. I mean, I'm optimistic about the future of the world because people yearn to be free, and that's what our founding fathers over 250 years ago felt, and they were able to embody. And I think we just have to all remember, Tim, that the United States of America remains that shining city on the hill, the beacon of liberty, and we just need to always kind of be in that role and make sure that we hold our friends, accountable, make sure that they're doing what they've agreed to do, make sure that we create this environment so that a rising tide will lift all the boats, worldwide. And at the same time, have to, make sure that we have peace through strength, and that strength is what's going to ultimately make sure that we have peace. It's not, there's no way to reverse that equation. We have to be strong. We have to be strong militarily and economically, and that's what's going to ensure the peace. And so far we're on a great path. Again, we've had 6 or 7 peace deals just in the last 6 months since President Trump was sworn in, and I think we're going to have more ahead. So it is a good moment for U.S. diplomacy, and obviously I'm having a great time and enjoying the work that's so important and critical and crucial over here in Brussels.
Ambassador Matt Whitaker, thanks for taking the time with us. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Tim. Good to see you again, my friend.
Bye-bye.